Naming the best duo in the A Song of Ice and Fire series would be impossible. There's just too many classic friendships and couples to choose. Instead, I think it would be more fun to talk about all these golden moments, even though main characters that George Martin puts extra special attention to, like Jon, Daenerys, Arya, and Tyrion, have multiple duos to pick from. The easy tag team selection for Jon would be his bonded direwolf Ghost, but I think that's just because everyone loves a good pet saving the day story. Though for a large portion of the books, Ghost kind of just does his own thing. There are far better picks for Jon in my opinion, as lovable as the Stark's direwolves are. Samwell Tarly is fine, but their relationship has been seen and done before a million times in other fiction. I wish Jon and the former King Beyond the Wall, Mance Rayder, had more moments together, as every chapter, and even the scene from Game of Thrones with them together, was so good. But until they reunite in the books, if they ever reunite that is, it's between Ygritte and Tormund Giantsbane for me. These relationships, as different as they are far more interesting than all the others and more impactful for their character arcs. Ygritte showed Jon what a world living free feels like, and he showed her a world where a man doesn't have to physically steal her for a couple to form. An overall wholesomely tragic love interest. As much as they enjoyed their time together, it had to come to an end, with the wildlings planning to completely wipe out Jon's buds, who were part of the Wall's Night's Watch. Their chemistry was so real that the actors playing their roles fell in love in real life, got married, and now have children. Wild stuff. Tormund's good too, but his character leans a little too heavy towards the comic relief cliche that every main character has to have. This duo is being set up for big things in the next book, and was a lot of fun in the show, but there's a reason years later people are still saying. Picking out Arya's best duo partner is another tough one. There are 4 good candidates for her. Water dancing coach Syrio Forel, the charismatic Braavosi, who was only around for a couple scenes before being hunted down. Things take a dark turn for Arya's character, escaping the Lannisters. First came Gendry as a duo, King Robert Baratheon's bastard son, who was on the run with her. Then the faceless men assassin Jaqen H'ghar, another Braavosi. Next came the Hound, a duo so good that I hoped would be the only sequel HBO would consider making, till they went and killed the Hound in the final episodes. Lastly, there's the Kindly Man, training Arya on Braavos to be one of the faceless men, like Jaqen H'ghar. They spent quite a bit of time together in the big change of pace for Arya's character, but no one's topping the time Arya spent traveling with the Hound. Their story arc is one of the best in all the series, starting off from Arya wanting nothing more than killing him herself after Sandor Clegane killed her little friend on the way to King's Landing. We start to see different shades of Sandor's character in King's Landing during his time with Sansa. He saved her from a savage mob, then offered to free her from the Lannisters, which she refused. Because Sansa's a preteen dummy in the early books. His motivations for saving Sansa may or may not have been romantic, but hey, that's this world the story is set in. If that grosses you out, wait till you find out how old Dany is when she married Khal Drogo. The Hound, who was on Arya's kill list, gives her more reason to take him out after he kidnaps her in hopes to get some sweet ransom gold from one of her rich family members, didn't matter who. To her surprise, he treats her just as well as the Brotherhood Without Banners. The worst he did was knock her out with the back of an axe to avoid the Red Wedding. But I wouldn't go so far as to call them friendly, though eventually Arya wouldn't try escaping him. Then, when the Mountain's men recognized the Hound during their travels, it was Arya that saved his drunken life. Arya was learning forgiveness, and the Hound was getting softer. Their chapters together were perfect, the right mix of badass and hilarious. The Mountain's men injured the Hound to the point where he had trouble horse riding, then fell off into a feverish sleep. Arya had a serious case of self-conflict in this moment. This may be her best chance to cross the Hound off her kill list. Then Sandor woke to Arya holding her sword needle. His eyes opened. "You remember where the heart is?" he asked in a hoarse whisper. As still as stone she stood. I was only. "Don't lie," he growled. "I hate liars. I hate gutless frauds even worse. Go on, do it." When Arya did not move, he said, "I killed your butcher's boy. I cut him in half," and laughed about it after. He made a queer sound, and it took her a moment to realize he was sobbing. "And the little bird, your pretty sister, I stood there in my white cloak and let them beat her. I took the bloody song. She never gave it. I meant to take her too. I should have her bloody and ripped her heart open before leaving her for that dwarf." A spasm of pain twisted in his face. "Do you mean to make me beg, bitch? Do it. The gift of mercy. Avenge your little Michael." "Micah," Arya stepped away from him. "You don't deserve the gift of mercy." That's where this tag team is left in the books. But like in Game of Thrones, there was enough hints at his survival, meaning a reunion is possible. There's so many similarities between this duo and the most iconic duo from the lore, Sir Duncan the Tall and Aegon Targaryen V, the main characters of the Dunk and Egg short stories that Martin likes to write from time to time. Similar in appearance to Arya and the Hound, and even the whole traveling around while keeping the little one's identity hidden. Generally, Dunk and Egg's relationship is more wholesome and less chaotic. Speaking of wholesome, who doesn't love the relationship Ned had with Robert, as well as Stannis and Davos? The Baratheons clearly need some of the good guys to balance them out. There's not much written about my favorite character, Oberyn Martell, and his unlikely friendship with Willis Tyrell. All we know is that when they were younger, Oberyn accidentally injured Willis in a tourney joust. Everyone expected this to fuel their family's hatred for one another. Willis's father, Lord Mace Tyrell, pressured his eldest son and heir to enter the tilts when he was far too young. The inexperienced noble wound up going against the most dangerous man in the tourney. Willis's horse fell atop of his own leg after their defeat, crushing his leg and permanently disabling him. This ended Willis's fighting career, but started his interest in animal breeding to pass the time. Oberyn and Willis shared an interest in horses, and would write back and forth to each other even after all these years. Some nice backstory, but not enough to put them on this list. Oberyn's relationship with his older brother Doran is, though. They are like two sides of a coin. Prince Doran being the more level-headed one with no battle skills, since he's developed gout, and Oberyn being rash and very skilled with a spear. Despite being so rash and violent, Oberyn does take his brother's orders seriously out of love and respect, and they're both very intelligent. When their sister Elia Martell was raped and murdered by the Mountain, Doran talked his little brother out of a war with the crown, instead playing it smart to play the waiting game. Justice would come, but not if they're impatient. Now that Oberyn's gone, it's difficult for Prince Doran to keep his passionate people at ease, because Doran is seen as too cautious in contrast. But if Doran was more like Oberyn, he would end up dead just like his brother. Daenerys in the books has yet to tame Drogon, so kind of hard to call them a duo. A lot of fans loved her first marriage with Khal Drogo, and her time spent with Missandei isn't anything too interesting. But the dynamic between Dany and her Lord Commander of her Queensguard was so good to readers. Sir Barristan Selmy is by far her most valuable follower. He's one of the best knights in all the story, and a great source of lore. Dany turns to him in terms of yearning for family. She believes that she's the last living Targaryen, and Barristan spent a large part of his life serving her house, as a Kingsguard member for her grandfather, father, and cousin. He was the only one to truthfully detail the extent of her father's madness, to the point where she had to ask him to stop, and even her older brother's true personality. He's quickly grown to be a grandfather-like figure for her, with both of these characters having each other's best interests at heart. Barristan finally feels like he's serving a worthy ruler after being stuck with garbage kings the last few successions. Plus, there's no way he's going to be killed off in the same fashion of Game of Thrones, so this duo has more time to shine when Dany returns to Meereen. The man coming for Dany, Victarion Greyjoy, has a newfound partner aboard his ship, a very powerful red priest by the name of Moqorro. Iron Islanders, like Theon's uncle, are typically pirate-like dirtbags, deeply superstitious and believe in their own drowned god. Even giving the time of day to a red priest was a surprise. But now, Moqorro quickly earned his way to being the ship's right-hand man, though everyone on board besides Victarion want him dead, for how ominous he acts and speaks with all his insanely accurate visions. Moqorro was found by the Ironborn in the middle of the sea when they were on their way to Meereen. He easily convinced Victarion to bring him along, by saying only he can save him from imminent death. The Red Priest used some kind of unseen fire magic to cure an infected wound Victarion had on his hand. To gain favorable winds, Moqorro then convinces Victarion to sacrifice their maester aboard, who was previously tending to the injured hand. There could be some manipulation going on here by the Red Priest on the poor simple Victarion, because that's usually how it goes with these guys. But he somehow halfway converted Victarion to follow the Lord Light. This was a fun couple chapters, unique from all the rest. Jaime Lannister and Brienne of Tarth are a no-brainer though. I kinda hate how their relationship unraveled in Game of Thrones' final season. I'll just blank that out of my memory and think back to the good times of a character being able to kickstart Jaime's redemption arc. Brienne's his reminder of what a true knight is. And what does she get in return? Better treatment than any other male noble has ever shown her. Brienne's chapters without him around weren't the best, but Jaime, from book 2 onward, is one of the best written characters. Sorry Podrick fans, Brienne's dual partner is the Kingslayer. Jaime has some hilarious sparring sessions with the mute Ilan Payne, well in the books that is, and Tyrion and Jaime were pretty wholesome together growing up, but come on, there's no debate here. It's like Bronn was written just for Tyrion. We all know Jordan Martin goes extra hard for Tyrion POV chapters. There's so many of the better written characters like Tywin, Olenna, and even Euron that are lacking some good moments with others, so I can't talk much about them. If we go back in time, maybe we can have a discussion about Tywin and his cousin wife, Joanna Lannister, but her backstory isn't the most fleshed out. Since I'm already on the topic of past lore, might as well touch on House of the Dragon's era. King Viserys and his daughter, the realm's delight, Rhaenyra Targaryen, had a nice father-daughter relationship. The rogue Prince Daemon had a lot of friendships in his day, but out of all the Targaryens' dragon bonds, his with Caraxes showed how in tune with each other they can become. It's mostly seen with the Stark kids and their direwolf partners, but you can actually see Daemon and Caraxes' bad influence on each other, making them wilder and wilder. Viserys' predecessor, his grandfather, the old king Daenerys Targaryen, has a lot written about him, and his very long life and marriage with his sister wife, Alicent. As gross as it sounds, this was as close to a perfect couple as you're gonna find in the story. There was some conflict at times, but they were productive fights, with the good queen trying to implement more progressive values to the continent, mainly with how women are seen and treated. Her death destroyed the old king, and it wouldn't be long before he would join her. Their bonded dragons even had a relationship with each other. Jaehaerys' Vermithor and Alicent's Silverwing. They were actually written to be partners. First time we hear anything like that about dragons. As for the other animal-human tag teams, I gotta talk about Lord Commander Mormont and his personal raven. Before you call me crazy, hear me out. I wish this thing had a name besides Mormont's raven, but holy shit, I love this bird. Jon Snow inherits the raven. He's named the next Lord Commander. He gets an up-close and personal look at this weird-ass bird. When he describes it in the 5th book, he says, "It was a big bird, old and bold and scruffy, utterly without fear." If there wasn't magic and skin changing in this series, you would say this bird is haunted, but it's likely someone has worked into it and a part of them remains deep in its mind. It creepily constantly asks for corn to everyone's annoyance, except Gior. The old bear seemed to be the only one that could tolerate its strange habits. But in the end, like all scavengers, the raven didn't hesitate taking some bites out of its former master, even though it unusually preferred vegetables over meat. If that didn't convince any show watchers out there to check out the books and read some of the weird shit this bird would say, maybe this next couple of characters will. If dark humor is your thing, there's a couple brothers of Night's Watch that serve it up every Jon chapter they're featured in. Pip and Edison Tollett. These two don't hang out with each other as much as the other duos, because they're part of Jon Snow's small friend circle he amassed at the wall. So they're only really a duo because you can't talk about one without bringing up the other. Pip is a new recruit along with Jon and Sam, so he still has the spirits higher than some of the other brothers. His jokes are dark, but a bit more playful. Ed, on the other hand, has his life completely sucked out of him by the time A Game of Thrones begins. It's why they call him Dolores. Ed actually hails from a noble family in the Vale, the minor House Tollett. Joined the Night's Watch, believing good old recruiter Yoren that women love the black uniform. Yoren conveniently forgets to mention that their vow abstains them from being with a woman. He's the reason I still describe the way I speak in my videos as yabbering on. My old Septon used to say that books are dead men talking. Dead men should keep quiet is what I say. No one wants to hear a dead man's yabber. There's a quote from the 5th book. It's been a while since I brought up one of my favorite lines in all the series, and it comes from none other than Pip. The younger men were gathered at another table where Pip had stabbed a turnip with his knife. "The night is dark and full of turnips," he announced in a solemn voice. "Let us all pray for venison, my children, with some onions and a bit of tasty gravy." His friends laughed. Gren, Toad, Satin, the whole lot of them. Jon Snow did not join the laughter. Making mock of another man's prayer is fool's work, Pip, and dangerous. Pip says this while Stannis, Melisandre, and all their men are around them at the wall. It was so good. I guess I should also mention Beric Dondarrion and his best pal, Thoros of Myr. It's through them we learn a new form of necromancy magic, a fire version compared to the ice magic necromancy the White Walkers are using. They're cool, I guess, but who can really top Ed and Pip? Pip dies early on in Game of Thrones, but not in the books. He's still kicking and cracking good ones. While Tormund can be a little obnoxious at times, as much as I love the character, Ed and Pip have the appropriate amount of humor sprinkled into their depressing setting as part of the Night's Watch. With such a subjective list, some other nerds are gonna have very different favorite duos. I won't be mad when you call me dead wrong, but just have a duo of your own for me to mock. That's it, I'm out guys. Thanks for watching, I'll be back next week.